Chapter 29. On the Hunt. After finishing his dinner, Nick pushed his chair back and rose from the table, a satisfying warmth settling in his stomach from May's cooking. "Thanks for dinner, May," he said sincerely, his voice carrying genuine appreciation. It was absolutely brilliant. "You're welcome, Nick," May replied with a soft smile. "Anne mentioned something about your job with your uncle, so I won't keep you." James, still eating, looked up with mild curiosity. "How long do you reckon you'll be in the office?" "Hard to say," Nick answered, already heading for the door, "but I should be done before 11. "Don't stay up all night," May warned gently, a hint of maternal firmness slipping into her tone. "Tomorrow, all of you start lessons with me." "Lessons?" Connor blinked, glancing at Nick. "You didn't mention she was going to be our teacher too." Nick smirked. "You never asked." "All right," he said, giving them a nod. "I'll catch up with you all later." "See you, Nick," Anne replied warmly, though there was a quiet understanding in her voice. She knew he probably wouldn't be back until morning. "Don't overdo it," Connor added, concern soft in his eyes. He knew exactly what Nick was about to prepare for, and who he would become once he left. With a final nod, Nick stepped out of the dining room. His footsteps echoed softly along the polished floor of the grand corridor, chandeliers casting fractured light across the marble. The scent of varnished oak and aged paper lingered in the air, familiar, grounding. Yet beneath it pulsed the electric tension of the double life he carried. Reaching the office, Nick closed the door quietly behind him. The room was dim, lined with heavy shelves and antique furniture, every surface a carefully constructed disguise for what lay beneath. He crossed to the old mahogany desk, pausing by the one floorboard that creaked underfoot. He tapped his foot 3 times in a deliberate rhythm. Click. A hidden mechanism stirred beneath the floor, gears turning in muted harmony. A circular platform slid into view, descending with a soft hydraulic hum to reveal the entrance to the mansion's secret underworld. Nick stepped onto it, and the platform lowered smoothly, the light from above fading until only the hum of machinery remained. When it stopped, he stepped off into the subterranean expanse beneath the estate. Overhead, lights flickered on automatically, bathing the space in clean, white luminescence. The air was cool, tinged with the metallic scent of machine oil. Though industrial by design, the base carried an undeniable warmth, a quiet, humming sense of purpose. Nick moved briskly through the chamber, entering the adjoining control room. One by one, monitors flared to life, casting blue light across his face. Maps of London's districts expanded across one wall. Another streamed surveillance feeds from drones and city cameras. Scrolling data filled the rest. Intelligent reports, encrypted messages, and crime network overlays, all feeding into the organized chaos of his war room. Taking his seat at the central console, Nick's fingers flew across the keyboard with mechanical precision. Layers of encrypted data peeled away under his touch, revealing the heartbeat of the city, criminal networks, gang movements, and hidden alliances buried within official records. This was his domain. This was where Zeus planned his next move. Apollo's smooth, ever-measured voice broke the hum of servers. "Sir, is this to become a nightly routine?" descending into the depths to pore over classified intelligence? Nick didn't look up, still navigating through the flood of data. Not every night, he replied evenly. But I need to keep up appearances upstairs. They think I'm just working remotely for my uncle. Meanwhile, I'm combing the police database to flag active criminals operating across the city. The system before him was a masterpiece of Midas engineering. Stealth-coded and powerful enough to slip through government firewalls without leaving a trace. It allowed Nick to ghost through private servers, intercept secure transmissions, and map London's criminal web in real time. He was a phantom in the machine. He was watching over a city that never truly slept. He opened one of the flagged profiles. Subject: Jake Matei. The file was extensive, page after page filled with warning signs, behavioral patterns, and psychological red flags. Once a devout member of a pacifist environmental collective known as the Children of Gaia, Matei had taken a darker path after being expelled for coercive behaviour and violent outbursts. His descent into extremism was meticulously documented. Bomb plots targeting civilian districts, anti-humanist manifestos laced with venom, and a trail of bodies that marked his transformation from idealist to murderer. Nick leaned back in his chair, the cold glow of the monitors catching the edge of his face as he read the timeline of escalating violence. Religion and violence, he muttered under his breath. A dangerous pairing, especially when one starts justifying the other. Apollo's voice broke the quiet hum of the servers, calm and inquisitive. "Forgive me for asking, sir, but are you not a man of faith yourself?" Nick paused, his eyes fixed on the screen, though his focus drifted inward. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weariness of someone who had wrestled long with belief and loss. "I believe people should be free to express their faith, whatever form it takes," he said slowly. "Faith can comfort, it can guide, it can even heal." He drew in a quiet breath, the tension in his jaw softening. But when it's used as a weapon, when belief becomes an excuse to hurt, control, or terrorize, that's when it stops being sacred. His gaze hardened, the screen's light reflecting in his eyes. That's what makes it so tragic. The actions of a few zealots stain the image of millions who just want peace. I've seen it happen again and again, and it never gets easier to watch. Apollo remained silent for a few moments, as if parsing not just data, but emotion itself. When he finally spoke, his voice had shifted, quieter, almost human. "Understood, sir." Nick redirected his attention to the next file, his fingers hovering briefly above the keyboard before entering a new command. The name that appeared on the screen made his brow crease. Subject: Maya Triggs. Lines of text scrolled across the monitors, painting a portrait as chilling as it was calculated. On the surface, Maya Triggs was a familiar face in the city's most exclusive nightclubs, an elegant socialite wrapped in designer fabric and champagne smiles. But beneath the polished facade lay something predatory. She had perfected a dark art, luring wealthy men into trust, seducing them with charm and the promise of an unforgettable night. But the evening always ended the same way. Nick leaned forward, jaw tightening as the report unfolded. Maya would spike her victims' drinks, just enough to leave them conscious but compliant. before escorting them to a rented hotel room under a fabricated identity. There, she would bind them to the bed, photograph them in compromising positions, and later threaten to leak the images unless they paid her staggering sums of money. The cruelty didn't stop with blackmail. The psychological aftermath was devastating. Several of her victims, men too frightened or ashamed to seek help, had taken their lives rather than face the scandal. The file spared no details. Transcripts of suicide notes, records of bankruptcies, and families torn apart by one woman's orchestrated malice. Nick exhaled sharply, disgust cutting across his face. "That's not someone I'd ever want to run into on a date," he muttered darkly. "She's using the Cosby tactic." "Correct," Apollo replied with clinical precision. "The compound is an advanced synthetic derivative of midazolam, fast-acting, nearly undetectable. She also employs a black market jacker to generate false IDs and scrub her digital traces between targets. It renders her virtually invisible to standard surveillance." Nick leaned back, the rhythmic hum of the monitors underscoring his thoughts. "If I ever have to go undercover near her," he said quietly, "I'll need to tread cautiously." His gaze lingered on the screen, the name Maya Triggs, glowing coldly against the dark interface. "People like her aren't just criminals," he said, voice low and resolute. "They're predators. They don't just steal money, they steal trust, dignity, and hope." A shiver traced his spine, not from fear, but from understanding. This was the true face of the war he fought. It wasn't only about bombs, bullets, or conspiracies. It was about the darkness that smiled, charmed, and walked unnoticed among the innocent. The final file Nick opened concerned a notorious boy racer named Thomas Gordon, though he liked to be called the Nighthawk. A thrill-seeker turned menace, Thomas was a central figure in the Midnight Marauders, a gang notorious for reckless street races that tore through the city with scant regard for safety. Their stunts had caused millions in damage and left a trail of injuries and, brutally, fatalities in their wake. Nick's shoulders tensed as he read. The deeper he dug, the heavier a knot grew in his chest. 5 years earlier, the Marauders had staged a race through Leicester Square. Attempting a high-speed drift, Thomas lost control and ploughed into the front of a small noodle bar. The impact killed a family of 4, crushing the youngest, a 2-year-old girl, instantly. The country had erupted with outrage. But the real injustice came in the courtroom. Despite the gravity of the crime, Thomas received a sentence many considered insultingly lenient. Whispers of corruption had swirled then. Now Nick saw them confirmed in black and white. Thomas's father was a senior executive at Golden Thread Apparel, a label favoured by the city's elite. Quietly, behind closed doors, strings had been pulled to spare the Gordons full public disgrace. Nick's face darkened with disgust. Justice for the rich, silence for the grieving. "Fucking hell," he muttered. On the screen, Thomas Gordon smirked, free and unrepentant. A headline blared. "Nighthawk rides again. Thomas Gordon, released from prison, vows to move on from tragedy." Below, images showed mourners outside the court, clutching framed photos of the family Thomas had killed. Their faces were carved with pain and fury as they denounced him as a murderer and demanded real justice. Nick's jaw clenched as he scrolled the article. The lawyer's hollow statements and the bland assurances of rehabilitation, each word fueled his anger. He's back out there, Nick thought. And if history's any guide, he won't stay quiet for long. Apollo, he said, turning to the console, send me any CCTV footage or traffic reports showing Thomas Gordon's current location. At once, sir, Apollo responded. Within seconds, feeds populated the screens. Apollo's voice cut through the base's hum. Sir, the Midnight Marauders are convening with Thomas Gordon in Peckham. They are planning a celebratory street race to mark his release. Nick's eyes flashed. Fury ignited in his chest. Not if I have anything to say about it. Nick leapt from his chair, urgency snapping through his limbs like electricity. Nick sprinted across the underground platform, his superbike, the Centaur 32X, gleaming beneath the artificial lights, a predator poised for unleashing. In one smooth motion, he tapped his nanolinker and barked, Zeus! A searing flash erupted around him, streaks of gold and electric blue folding into being. Nanomites swarmed, armor was slotted into place with surgical precision. In seconds, Nick Adams was gone. Only Zeus remained. He vaulted onto the Centaur's seat. The bike woke with a deep, thunderous growl. Systems came online in a single, synchronous breath. HUD elements flared. Routing, diagnostics, atmospheric reads, every inch of the machine alert and hungry. Zeus gripped the bars and opened the throttle. The Centaur screamed forward, tires clawing at the dust of the abandoned tunnel as the underground filled with the roar of horsepower and the promise of retribution. Sir, Apollo chimed over the internal comms, cool and practiced, I recommend egress via Peckham Rye Station. It's open air and presently disused, minimal civilian exposure. Good thinking, Zeus replied, eyes locked on the tunnel mouth swiftly approaching. Plot the route and keep scanning for street-level activity. If they've already started, I want their route, positions and car specs relayed to my HUD in real time. Already in progress, Apollo confirmed. The Centaur tore through the darkness, momentum building with each heartbeat. Zeus's focus narrowed to a razor edge. The engine's rhythm matched the pulse in his veins. Lives were at stake, families, futures. He would not let Thomas Gordon and the Midnight Marauders turn another street into a grave. He leaned into a bend. The bike obeyed with balletic precision, steel and shadow blurring into a single streak. I have to catch them before they hit top speed, he thought. He needed to act quickly, before the cheering started, and blood spilt. The walls of the tunnel became a smear of light. For Zeus, this was more than an interception. He was hunting a ghost born of the justice system's failures. Tonight, he would make the system itself feel the pain.